What started this ministry was a trip to Africa, actually to 3 different countries. And so I had the opportunity, because of a fellow in my church, to go and learn about digital camera work. I'm not a professional, but so all the pictures that you see are probably mine, or at least borrowed from someone that had been on the trips. And we'll just start out and see how all this works. Karibu is a Swahili term for welcome, and they speak a number of languages in Kenya, and Swahili is one of them, and it depends on where you are and what tribe you belong to, but they also speak English. Africa Water Wells is the name of the ministry that I've been involved with. And these are the pictures that I took on the 3 safaris. The next movie was done by a couple in our church, and it only covers 2 of the water wells. So that tells you it's fairly old, but it is worth seeing.
Africa is a majestic continent, and Kenya is a beautiful country in Africa.
But the lack of clean water threatens the human population. 17 million Kenyans, half of the population, lack access to safe drinking water. Women and girls bear the burden of walking miles at a time to gather dirty water from the rivers, streams, and ponds, full of waterborne disease that is going to make them and their families sick.
In 2010, Bud and Sandy from Arlington, Texas, decided to spend their 50th anniversary on safari in Africa. It was in Kenya that Bud learned the extent of the water crisis. He understood the need for clean water. He had founded an irrigation company.
On the way home, God gave Bud a vision to help the Kenyans. Return and drill a water well.
After 2 years of planning, Bud and a team from his church traveled to Kenya to the village of Kapkasembi to help as the borehole was drilled. The name given to the team was Africa Water Wells. But God did so much more. One team member had over 20 years sobriety and was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He went along not knowing why, but carried a relationship pointing to the need for abstinence from alcohol. He spoke 4 times a day, he was interviewed on national TV, spoke to hundreds, and shared how God had changed his life. Many have gained sobriety as a result of what God has done.
Sandy and another team member began a women's conference, teaching the skills necessary to sustain Sewing machines were donated, and the ladies learned how to make headscarves. Since that first conference, purses and beads have been added. The pastor from Grace Covenant Church in Arlington, Texas, held a pastor's conference, teaching those that attended the power of God's Word.
Over the next 5 years, more trips were made. A school was built in the village for the children. It was named after Bud. Laptops were donated and refurbished in the US. They were then delivered to schools in the area. Land was donated and a clinic was built to help those who were sick and those who were wanting to escape addictions. Hundreds were seen in 2017 when a medical team from Carrollton, Texas joined the Africa Water Wells team. Everyone was prayed for and many accepted Christ.
A second water well was drilled for the village and surrounding area.
Bud's vision continues to grow. First, by establishing a hygiene education program in schools, by teaching hand washing, and by starting the micro-business of soap making for the women. Second, by starting the micro-business of latrine fabrication for the men, which will help hundreds of families in the area by eliminating open defecation. Even more boreholes are planned for the future. Bud's life on Earth has ended, but his vision to help Kenyans continues to multiply.
Almighty God, our gracious Father, you are our rock and fortress. We have to admit our faith was somewhat tested, but we have learned over and over to depend on you. For it is through you all things are possible. In Jesus' name. Amen.
This was our safari group in Kenya, and the gentleman that you're going to see dance in a minute was our table waiter, and it was through him that we found out about the intense water problem in Kenya. He was delivering the cake for our 50th wedding anniversary. One of the countries we visited was South Africa, and Tanzania, and Kenya. Now, Kenya has an interesting history. It was involved with invading traders, an Arab dynasty, the British, of course, with the slaves, and then in the 50s, the Mau Mau tribe raised up and caused all kinds of problems. Thousands and thousands of people were killed. And then finally, independence came in 1963, and at that point, the land was distributed to the different tribes. And there are 42 or so tribes in Kenya. This is the area that we have worked in the most, and it is the Kalenjin tribe, and it is located in the community of Kapkasembe. Beautiful area, absolutely gorgeous. High, you think of Africa and the fact that, oh, it must be steamy. Not so at all. It's 6,000 feet above sea level, and it's in the Rift Valley. And not all the houses look like the one in the background, but you know, you don't want to miss a photo op. But green, and oh my, they can grow everything. Now our waiter, Yagan, showed us what happened when they needed to get water. And the men don't do this. This is the ladies' job. They take, if they have a donkey, and they go to the clearest stream. See how clear that is? That's what they're gathering for their water. Fill it in the plastic containers and then put it on their donkey and take it back to home 4 times a day. This was the first well, and it was in Kapkasembe. And you can see all the children, how pleased they were. They built a school there and named it after my husband, and it was Tilly Bay. Tilly Bay means clean water. And then they wanted to let everybody know that it was a school, so it was Academy School. And then I taught along with the pastor at a community called Kisumu, about 5 hours away. And it was a seminary, it was Baptist, and they were training these men to be pastors. And they started every morning with singing and dancing, and it was just fun to be around them. And I have a few shots of the roads. I mean, you just wouldn't believe what you could see driving down the highway. Chickens tied on top. And if you were moving, just put it on the top of your vehicle. Or if you wanted to move your hay, why not? Sugar cane. But actually, this is what the roads look like once you got off the asphalt. And we got stuck 5 times in 2012. Shopping, oh my, anytime you wanted something, it was right there by the road. And they loved to bark. Need shoes? Why not? Just everything. Sofa, bed, how about a chair? And then the second well was also in Kapkasimbi. And the women were lined up. It was a deep well. And you know, you get some that are that way. And even in the drought, the communities would come from all around and go to Kapkasimbi because of that well. And we met with the governor, and this was Governor Ruto. Alcoholism is a huge problem in Kenya. And when he learned that the man with the glasses that was mentioned in the movie, without the hat, he said, we will do something. And they did all kinds of meetings where Greg spoke, but they did these soccer tournaments. Thousands and thousands of people would come. And with a translator, Greg would tell them how God had changed his life. And here are some of the meetings. And here's Greg. They always had entertainment. And you know, dancing is the DNA in the African people. And so this group was just tremendous. And it was at the safari. Not the safari, it was at the soccer tournament. We went to schools for Greg to speak. And Greg and I went all around the country, and wherever we landed, the men would gather and Greg would talk to them about how to change their lives with God's help. And then, of course, from all that, someone donated land to Africa Water Wells, and we were able to build a rehab medical clinic. And of all things, it worked. And we began planning for a team from Carrollton, as was mentioned in the movie, to come and do a 5-day clinic. And that clinic was actually blessed by the governor, and that's Governor Laboso. And turned out she was an absolute wonderful friend to me and to Africa Water Wells. People came by the hundreds. They would line up early in the morning, and God's timing was perfect because there was a nurses' strike. And so people that needed medications received free meds. There's another group here. And those posters were put everywhere to let everybody know. Dr. Chan was the key man, and his nurse was Dr. Sue. And this is an interesting story. We were staying at the Catholic Center, and there was a school right there. So I went out one day, and I said to the children, I'm going to teach you a dance. Now, they're looking at me like, I don't know about that. But here it was. I don't know if I can do this with just one hand. It's called the mango dance. And it's mango, mango, mango. Just, okay. Yellow mango, green mango. And then you do this, going down and coming up. And so they practiced with me, and it was fun. So it was like, they didn't know what to think of this lady who was out there with all of that. Now, there are 2 slides that have a problem, which means I have to go and touch the screen. we had the Jesus film shown in the village of Caucasimini, and that worked beautifully. You had to wait till it was dark, and there were over 1,000 people there. And the fellow that was doing the film said they did one at another village, and it was a Maasai village. And one of the men got so involved in the story of Jesus, always told in their language, that he threw a spear. The Maasai used spear, but no one was hit. So, God protected that. And this is an interesting story. There was a missionary family in Nairobi, and the daughter decided she wanted to help the women that needed to make a living. So she began bringing the women, single moms, widows, into her garden and into the area there, and they started making beads, rolling the little clay and so forth. It caught on to the point that it is a huge industry, and what she did is build facilities for the women so they have a place to live, and then these gals do the beads. And up here, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 of the Kazuri beads, and they're beautiful. And I kind of treat myself every time I go and just, bring one back. And if I have donors that have been involved, I try to bring something to them as well. They are absolutely gorgeous. Women's conferences, we began immediately doing those. These gals don't have a way to make a living. They can't get jobs, usually. So we started off by going to Yagan's house and teaching the women how to make headscarves. And a headscarf on an African woman means that she is married. This was a conference for single moms and widows. 50 or 60 women showed up. And of course we supply all the things that they need, and then they make these little items. There's one over there. That's to put on a glass or any kind of container to keep the bugs out. Lots of jewelry. And this was the conference that they dance. They always celebrate after you have done an event. Now, single moms and widows. This group was a widow group at a church that we attend called Bethel Gospel. And they were telling us about how they made money and inviting us to come to a meeting at Elizabeth Farm. This was the road to the farm. And it was a special meeting because they were being trained in how to build goat cages. And this fellow just showed them how. I can't imagine having to cut my own wood. But then they could have the ability to have a goat and milk the goat and make cheese, sell the milk, and so forth, just a way to make a living. And this group, single moms and widows, came to Elizabeth. And notice, they're covering themselves because I was there with my camera, as always. That is Elizabeth right there at the end. And these two ladies said, we want you to take our African ears. So they posed for me to focus in on their ears. The whole point for this meeting was that there was a group of women that would train the other women to make all these different items so that they could sell them. And that was the point of going to Elizabeth. Now this lady, unbelievable. Her name is Ruth, and this was a conference, and I'm going to show you all. This is sisal, and we were learning how to take one little tiny strand and roll it with others until it got thick enough to make these baskets. I did not do well with that. I failed sisal. Now, the worship services are not anything you've ever been to. I love them. I mean, it is a wonderful time. So I've got several. They start dancing young. You're the teenagers. And here's a worship service at a church that we attend. And they're having a wonderful time. See the lady that is barely moving? She's still moving. And this is another one. I have to touch the screen. And we've attended this church for a long time, off and on. It's not close to where we have our, I guess you'd call our home. The interesting thing is Greg spoke at that church. The bishop, who was the pastor's son, was an alcoholic. And King Edward, we called him, listened to it, and it changed his life. And so now he's part of the group that helps others conquer alcoholism. Now, Rachel Pye is an interesting, unbelievable something that third world countries can have. And it stands for, and I had to write it down, Remote Area Community Hotspot for Educational Learning. And what it does is it's like a little tiny Wi-Fi. And a techie in my church found it online, built them. It's like a little, as I said, a little baby Wi-Fi. So we take those along with, originally we used laptops and then we started using tablets. We train the teachers in the schools. The information is absolutely unbelievable. It has hundreds of books. It has, it's like a Wikipedia. It has medical information. It has information on gardening and all the school subjects, like from primary to calculus. And it comes up, on the screen, and the teachers are able to use that information. So that has been an absolute godsend. It's in 53 different countries. And there's a story to this. We were taking over 20 laptops into Kenya, and Lee was with me, and they stopped us and said, okay, you're going to have to pay for all these laptops. And it was not going to be cheap. I would say a couple of hundred, and we had many. I stood there and I just got madder and madder. I thought of all the things that Africa Water Wells had done in Kenya. And so I said to the gal, I said, call the manager. And so the manager came and he said, come into my office. And we started off, and then I was just furious. And I stopped, and it was like an out-of-body experience. I never planned to do this. But, he was saying, you're going to have to pay. I just stopped, and I turned, and I said, Jesus, you're going to have to change his mind. And I looked at him, and his eyes were like saucers. And he said, Lee was standing over with the suitcases and the carts. He said, get her out of here. Get her out of here right now. We rolled out. We didn't pay. And so God took care of it. But it was like, after all that Africa Water Wells has done, you're going to try to charge me? And they were not new computers. They were ones that had been, spruced up and taken in. So that was interesting. Now, I was going, and Lee was going, and we were on our way to a primary school, and we were going to be teaching the Rachel Pye. So I hopped on this because it was a long walk. I got there, and the children were fascinated. They wanted to ask me all kinds of questions. And they did, and I was able to answer. And then they said, who is the president of the United States? I went totally blank. It was like, oh my goodness, what is his name? I couldn't come up with it. And finally, Lee shouted out, Trump. And I said, oh, you see, I've been gone a long time, and I forgot who our president was. And they kind of looked at me like, this is a very strange place. And I wanted to show the full benefit of this. This was a group in the Caucasindy area where we did laptops and we did the Rachel Pie. And they had been practicing. It must have been 500 children there. And they were going to perform for us to show just how much they appreciated what we had done. This was a girls' school, and when we pulled up to the gate, there was a man standing there, and he came over to the window and he said, do you know who I am? Well, I didn't. I looked at him and I thought, no, I don't. And he said, I was in your class at Kasumu when you taught the Bible study. I'm now pastor. And so that was fun. And we were out in the Tulies. Usually that's where you were, out in the Tulies. And we trained the Rachel Pie there. And Lee is working with the teachers in order to show them how to do the program so they could show that then to the children. Now, Christian Relief Fund is a God thing, no doubt about it, because we learned from one of our people in Kenya that it was a Christian drilling company. Get this, it is located 501(c) nonprofit in Amarillo. And their main person managing and the one that does the scheduling for the drilling is in Dallas. And so we began working with them. That was the first well with them, and it was a hand pump in a cabbage field. And the fourth one was at YouTube, close to it. And then this was wonderful. At the Hypnosis Special Needs School, we found out that we were, oh dear, okay, battery low, going to do a well there. And there were 400 on the waiting list for this school. And so that was, significant. And here is, well,
You have to close that.
we may make it through and we may not. Anyway, we did a well for them, and these were some of the children. This is the well. Another school, the Mulcahy School, and it was both primary and secondary. They came out on a Saturday to greet us. They loved there. And their well was a hand pump. The Oxshar School, both primary and secondary. And the gentleman that does those schools is really an entrepreneur, so he has all kinds of businesses. And it was a good well. The eighth well was at Kakuris, and that was an interesting story because we had an email from a nurse in Michigan, and she was requesting a well in her village. And it worked out because she could comply. You have to have, our rule is you have to have 3,000 people that can use that well, and you have to have schools. And so it went in, and it was a good one. Pump, tower, and tank. That's part of the taller ones. And then Tenwick Hospital, amazing story here. Because Kakuris is very close to Tenwick, the driller, Philip, was able to visit with the CEO at Tenwick, and they became friends, and the CEO, Shem, said, we really would like for you to do some wells for our different clinics. It worked out that they would pay for a third, we would pay for a third, and then their support group in the States would do a third. So that was a bargain for us. The first one was Nikito, a really deep well, over 600 feet. Again, a pump tower and tank. And then the one that we did in 22 is Cabosa. And again, it was for Chenwick. Now, it had a fluoride problem. And so there had to be a filtering system. And what you're looking at behind that little building is whatever they had to have to get the water cleaned up so that it is drinkable. Again, another God story. We found out about a gentleman by the name of Bob DeGroot, and he came in after each village would come together and have a water council, and then he would take his team and he would train them so that those wells would be sustainable. Amazing man. And so we have 2 people working in Kenya that give us a report every quarter about what's going on. You had to have a bank account, you had to charge a few shillings for the water, so that when we leave and something happens to that well, they're able to repair it. So this was one of the meetings that Bob had. And here he is. He's from the Netherlands. Now, the Kenya celebration, hard to explain. We didn't expect it. We did not believe we'd ever be involved in anything like that. And that's shown in that movie. But I can't resist telling you more. What the women are saying, they are so glad to have clean water. They are saying, what's in your heart will come out on your face. And they just say it over and over and over again. And when we take a team in, everyone gets to be a part of the celebration after the well is being drilled or has been drilled. And I did only one because they're pretty long. And you are given a shuka, it's kind of like a blanket, and then gifts. And it goes on and on and on. Rain catch installation, that was something new. It's not pure water because it's coming off the roof, and you know birds are on the roof. And so it's piped then into a big tank, but it can be used like, you know, to clean the houses or gardening or whatever. So it is a way, and mostly people have rain catch systems. Now here they are delivering the tank to the primary school. They're very innovative. Can you believe you have a 10,000? And that's where it's going to go. And we did that one in 2020. And here are the children, all posed. And what you're looking at in the middle is the little tap for the water. That's not clean water. That's water off the roof. Pastors' conferences, we do those. And of course, those are very popular. This one was in 2020. And then we did something new called bucket training. And this is what it's all about. It's a 5-gallon bucket with a Sawyer filter on it. It will filter 1 million gallons of water for 10 years to 20 years. And if you clean properly those filters, it lasts. Now, if you don't, you know, you have to train them to do that sort of thing. So notice the big container up above, that fish in it, and then it's filtered down to that water. And so we do a follow-up, I think for 90 days, maybe longer, to make sure that people are really taking care of those filters. Holes are drilled. 30 people were given buckets. Now that equals 241 people because every family member is counted. And then they're given medications to clean their system out so that when they finally take that water, you know, it's going to be okay. We did another one that year, and there were 50 buckets. I don't have the numbers on that, but had to be quite a few. And there's a group. That was during COVID. Now, interestingly, last Friday, I had a conference call with 2 board members and the gentleman in Dallas who's part of the Christian Relief Fund. And we made our determination, because we had the reports that he had sent us, about what will we do in 2023. The first thing we will do is Laylet Village. You saw the hand pump. We're going to turn that into an electric pump, and that will be better. And then we will go to Timbrow Girls School, 2,000 girls, and put a well in there, assuming that we get a good report on the drilling and what that's going to be like. Now, interestingly, in 2020, when I was in Kenya, I went to that school, so I knew all about it, and I had the background, is this something that can work? And we think it will. Again, depending on the report that we get. Now, the table, I don't know how I can do this. Okay. I have the outfit that I would have worn if I hadn't had the plan for maybe using an amplifier because we were having trouble with the microphone. And there's an article here that came out in 2022 in the Arlington Magazine. And then my book is next to it. And the first book that I wrote, I learned. When you do all the editing with your laptop, you don't see errors. It's just like you're oblivious to them. But when they're printed and you're looking at the hard copy and you see all your grammatical errors and the mess. So I had to redo it and get an ISBN number. So it went on Amazon. The problem is, I don't know how they come up with the cost because it's horrible. But I have ordered from my company that I buy it from at a much lower price, but it's still expensive. It is hard copy, and there are hundreds of pictures. And so, if that's something you want and you don't mind paying $31 or $32 or whatever, then there's some cards up here. You can take my telephone number and let me know about it. And those are the Kazuri beads. And then all the gifts over here, and that's what they were. Those people have nothing, but they give me gifts every time I'm there. And I feel guilty, and yet you would insult them if you wouldn't take it. So there's everything. Now, a few of the items I've purchased, like the napkin rings, but nearly everything else, the big statues of the Kenyan people, all of those are gifts. And there's some stacks of printouts that Lee did, different articles. There was a wonderful article in 2014 in the Fort Worth Star-Journal. And it was like front page on life or whatever that section is with 2 other pages. But he printed them out, and then there's some from the Aspen paper. So if you want any of those copies, help yourself. Now, Asante Sana, that is Swahili for thank you. I love talking about Africa water wells. It's my life, and so I thank you.